In this video lesson, we're going to cover an amazing exercise that I call the chord push-up. The chord push-up is incredibly useful. It has many benefits. Those benefits include learning to learn new chord shapes quickly and develop your muscle memory, changing between chords more easily, as well as learning to play your chords without squeezing and potentially avoiding a lot of tension and pain in the hand. Advanced players will generally fret their chords by pulling their whole hand inwards rather than squeezing. I like to say to my students, don't be a lobster. There are no known lobsters that are great at guitar. Though if you can find a lobster that's great at guitar, please let me know. Okay, moving on. So the chord push-up is pretty straightforward. Basically, what we're trying to do is we're trying to learn to fret our chords from the shoulder. And when we do this, the guitar is going to kind of pull in this way. And so we want to kind of stabilize the guitar with our other arm. And we want to make the shape of a chord and learn to bring all the fingers down simultaneously. One common problem students have is that they'll learn their chords by putting one finger down at a time. And when you don't have the muscle memory for a chord, that's pretty much the only way to do it. You got to use at least one finger as leverage to make sure that you got them all lined up and everything. But advanced players, you'll notice, will just hop between the chords. Their fingers already know exactly where to go. And that allows them to change chords really, really quickly. That's because they have the muscle memory for the chords. If you have the muscle memory for a chord, you'll even be able to make the shape of that chord when your fingers are not on the neck. So for example, if I want a C chord, I can make the shape of a C chord, and then I can bring it onto the guitar neck, and indeed it is a C chord. And so that shows that I have the muscle memory for that chord. Whereas if it's a new chord shape and I don't have the muscle memory for it, I'm going to have to develop my muscle memory for that chord so I can switch to it effectively. That's where the chord push-up comes into play. So the way that we work with the chord push-up is we line our fingers up. You might do this one finger at a time in the beginning if you don't have the shape of the chord already memorized. But you want to touch the strings very, very lightly with your fingertips, and then practice bringing all the fingers in together to fret the chord, pulling back, pulling into the guitar fingerboard with your whole arm, fretting from the shoulder rather than squeezing. In fact, you can even play your chords with your thumb entirely off the neck, though it is nice to use the thumb for stabilization, and it's okay to squeeze a tiny bit with the thumb, but you want to have most of the force actually coming from the shoulder, bringing the fingers in. And that will get you that nice clean fret. And then when you release the chord, you want to relax your arm and let the fingers kind of float very off the strings, just a couple millimeters. And then they'll be hovering in space and ready to move to the next chord. So for the chord push-up, what we're looking to do is bring the fingers in together simultaneously, hold, and then relax the arm and release. And you actually want to keep the fingers touching on the strings so that you can make sure that you're still in the shape. And then you fret again, and release, fret again, and release, fret again, and release. And I actually like to do this with a metronome. I'll usually set it at like 50 beats per minute, so every 2 minutes I'm doing 100 chord push-ups, but you don't have to do it with a metronome. An important detail is that you want to do chord push-ups with the same chord until you have the muscle memory for that chord developed. So rather than switching between different chords, try to stick with the same one for a couple minutes at a time, usually just 1 to 2 minutes. And in that time, you might practice that chord 100 times. So how long does it take to develop muscle memory for a chord? Well, based on my experience and the reports from my students, it generally takes about 1,000 chord push-ups to learn a chord, which might sound like a lot, but if you're doing the chord push-ups where you're doing 100 every other minute, that's about 20 minutes of practice total. Of course, on a per chord basis. places. But you wouldn't want to do 20 minutes on a single chord in a single practice session. Typically, I don't recommend working on more than 6 chords in a particular practice session, and usually only between 2 and 5 minutes per chord at the very most. But if you do that, where you do a couple minutes per chord each day, you should learn the muscle memory for those chords in just a couple weeks. And that's a really great thing, because I've noticed as a teacher, sometimes students struggle with their chord changes for months or even years if they're not applying this method. But once you have the muscle memory for your chords, you'll be able to move between them with confidence and nail your chord changes. When you're doing the chord push-up, make sure you relax, and again, don't squeeze your chords. You want to bring the fingers in gently. You don't want to pull harder than you need to. Using way too much tension is a problem. So you want to just, lightly pull in, lightly release, lightly pull in, lightly release. And when you've got the muscle memory, you'll notice that you can actually lift your fingers entirely off the strings and have them stay in the shape. That's a really good sign when that happens. So if you do your chord push-ups again for about a half hour or so total per chord, you're probably going to see really major improvements in your muscle memory for those chords, and you'll have a much easier time switching between them. I hope you found this video helpful. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next video.